And I'm so happy that you're here. I'm so happy. I had such a fantastic chat with you the other day, and I didn't know so many things about your life. I just heard your name, but a conversation with you had never happened. You are not only a pretty face, but a beautiful soul. Thank you so much for being here today. And I will allow you, or say, shut my mouth up and allow you to talk from here, and just just spread the magic that you have to. Thank you so much.
So first of all, I want to start, by connecting to what Arti said and just sharing with you my little brown and furry baby. Okay, my baby.
So cute.
She is, and she was rescued. So she's a pit bull, and we rescued her from a village where she was used for dog fighting and breeding. And just, she is receiving unconditional love 24 hours a day. I think she's the most hugged and kissed creature in the neighborhood, and the transformation is amazing.
Wow.
Which goes to show, for me, kind of like it's a good segue to talk about a few things that I wanted to speak about today. And the first one is that I think that everything can be healed if we really wanted to. It doesn't mean that the pain stops existing. It doesn't mean that the scars go away, but it does mean that healing is always possible. So I'm going to talk about healing, a bit later. But I'm going to start by sharing my story, because we're going to talk about healing, and I'm going to talk about choice, and I'm going to talk about control, and I'm going to talk about living and all of that, and I'm going to do all of that in an hour. And I want to invite you to ask questions and make comments and share your thoughts. Let's make this a conversation. So feel free to jump in and write in the chat and stuff like that. So, we never know what other people are going through. We go through the world and we look at other faces and we make all these judgments, and we assume that everybody has a good life. I mean, cognitively, we know that other people are dealing with a lot of stuff, but from our subjective experience, we usually don't feel that. And when I talk about my life story and I talk about my illness and stuff like that, one of the first things people say to me is, yeah, but you don't show, you don't look like someone that has been through all of that. And I ask, so how does a person like that look like? I grew up, I'm Israeli. I was born to two Israeli parents, very adventurous and full of life. And when I was 6 months, they decided to go and explore Africa. And they took me with them, and they traveled to a country on the west coast of Africa called Liberia. Now, I don't know if you know the history of Liberia, but Liberia was the first and last American colony. About 200 years ago, America decided to emancipate and free her slaves. And basically, they put about 200 freed slaves on a ship and sent them back to Africa. The only thing is that they sent them to the west coast of Africa, and the west coast of Africa was already populated. So these poor freed slaves were basically dumped off the ship that quickly sailed back to America, leaving them on the beach, basically to fight the indigenous people and try to survive. So the story of Liberia is actually a story of Black people fighting Black people until there was a state there. And the flag of Liberia is very similar to the flag of America, only they have one star and stripes. And the flag is called the Lone Star of Liberia. When we reached Liberia, my dad, that went a few months before us, got a job with a Swedish company as a civil engineer. And his job was to build and plan dams and run and create roads through the jungle. And I grew up, the first 2 years of my life, I grew up in a lovely village, the only white child there, basically running around in my underwear all day with all my friends. We had no electricity and no running water, and I had an amazing childhood. And my mother was just there with the rest of the women, and my dad would go and work and come back. And after 2 years, we moved to one of the villages and to the main city. And all in all, we lived in Africa for 6 years. And these were 6 beautiful years for me. Although within that beauty, there was a terrible secret that I was hiding. And that secret was the secret of being molested by a family friend at the age of 3. Now, a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about, sometimes people ask me, well, does it feel nice talking about something like that? And I said, you know what? It has nothing to do with feeling nice, because I feel that everything that is personal is also political. When I say political, I mean social. What I mean is that we're all connected. No person is an island. When I am sitting here, you know my name and you see my face, and I'm saying to you, I was molested at the age of 3. It's not my fault, and I'm not ashamed of it. I am basically sending out an energy to every other woman that was molested as a child, and I'm connecting to her on an energetic level and saying, my sweet beloved sister, you're not alone too. And if you want to talk, I'm here. And if you want to talk, there are other women that are here. And I have an agenda to break the cycle of shame around sexual abuse. So my first sexual abuse was at the age of 3. And at the time, it was good that my parents came back quickly. My parents basically left me without friends. They went out for 20 minutes. For me, it felt forever. People ask me, do you remember? And I say, yes, I do remember. I have vivid memories from the age of 3 of this man and what he did to me. My parents then got consultation from a therapist that told him, if the child doesn't speak, and I was 3, the child doesn't speak, she probably doesn't remember. Only I remembered everything. And what I learned was that if it's not spoken at home, then probably it's shameful. And I grew up for many years and learned in a non-verbal way that there was something about me that I needed to keep a secret and I should never talk about because that was shameful. So I carried that secret with me and simultaneously had a wonderful, wonderful childhood growing up in Africa. When I was 6, there was a civil war in Africa, and we had to basically run for our lives because a lot of the violence was turned towards white people, and basically the government was overthrown, and there was a revolution, there was a military government. So very quickly we found ourselves in a situation we had to leave beloved Liberia and come back to Israel. And as I came back to Israel, I knew Hebrew because we used to visit my grandparents, but I came back in the second grade. So I was actually 7 and I didn't know how to read and write. And I was placed temporarily into a school that was Jewish religious. Because of circumstances, my parents were looking for an apartment. And basically that was the second time that I learned to be quiet, because everything that I wanted to share about my childhood in Liberia wasn't accepted. Remember, this was a religious Jewish school. So the fact that I grew up with Christians and Muslims and pagans and a lot of other and Hindus made me non-Jewish in the eyes of other children. They couldn't understand it. I came with a very heavy accent. I came from another culture. And very quickly, I learned that when you're different, you need to hide that. And the next few years, I made every possible effort to become as Israeli as possible. I made sure to erase my accent, and I made sure to behave very Israeli, and I made sure to fit in so nobody can see. My difference doesn't show on the outside. And in the inside, I was heartbroken. I was missing my homeland, which for many years wasn't Israel, it was actually Liberia. I was missing my friends. I was missing my house. I was missing my dogs. I was missing my school. I was missing so much. And I didn't feel comfortable. And as I grew up, I became a teenager. And at the age of 18, I graduated from high school. And before I graduated from high school, I learned martial arts from the age of 16. And towards the age of 18, I found myself being sexually abused by one of my martial arts teachers. Now, everything that I learned basically, which was how to defend myself, was absolutely useless here, because he was my teacher, he was my coach. And basically, everything that I tried in order to defend myself was absolutely useless. And at that point, I learned again that I needed to be quiet, I needed to be silent, that, you know, everything that I learned, basically, I'm powerless in this world. And I need to hide my pain, and I need to hide my shame, and I need to act as if everything is okay and blend in so nobody sees. My scars don't show, my pain don't show, my screams are not heard. I fit nicely and quietly. I'm a nice, polite, educated, and very, very obedient woman. With that experience, I went into the army, because at the age of 18, basically in Israel, everybody joins the army. It's mandatory. I served in a combat unit, and I became an officer. And something in me started falling apart. And that was the first time that I learned transcendental meditation. I started meditating. And all of a sudden, in the quiet of the meditation, I realized I cannot be quiet anymore. And I needed to come back to be me. Only I didn't know how. I didn't know how. And as I was trying to be me, and as I was trying to find my voice again, and as I was trying to find my connection to my body and my femininity and who am I, of course, I met a lot of resistance, and I had a lot of experiences. And growing up in a society that is very masculine and that is that has a strong patriarchal structure that is quite chauvinist, I found myself being met by resistance and almost backfire every time I kind of tried to, you know, to embody, to fill up my own space and stand up and speak my truth. And there came a point where I found myself being attacked again from a man that basically wanted to date me. And I said, no, you're very nice, but you're not my type. And that really upset him. How dare I? And I found myself fighting again for my life and struggling not to be raped. And at that point, something broke completely. I remember coming home after fighting him off. And the good thing is, some people came and he heard noises, so he was scared of being caught. And I sat down in my room and I took my army pistol and I put a bullet in the chamber, and I sat down and I said, okay, the cycle of abuse, the cycle of silence, the cycle of being beaten down into obedience, that stops today. And it stops in one of two ways. Either I put a bullet through my head and I end it, or I change completely the way I am living. I change completely my choices, and I do things in a different way. So after sitting there for about 5 hours, maybe even more, because the decision wasn't simple, I was in so much pain, I actually decided to postpone the decision and made a choice to live. I said, I'm going to reach out for help, and I called the Rape Crisis Center. And that was the first time I actually reached out and spoke about what I went through all these years. And the first time I went and got help from a therapist. And I said to myself, I am choosing life now. If I come again to this junction, then I can always go back and end my life. But if I'm choosing life now, I am choosing it 100%. I'm giving everything that I have. I am going to live to the fullest. I'm going to be me to the fullest. I'm going to speak out to the fullest. I am not holding back ever again. And I started a process of therapy. Now, interestingly, or maybe not, okay, because this is not going to be a big surprise to Anu, because we both have a background in meta-medicine, okay? A few years later, at the age of 26, I was diagnosed with a heart and lung condition. I couldn't breathe. The illness is called pulmonary hypertension, and what it means is that basically the body is committing, even if I would use a metaphor, it's committing suicide it's constricting the vessels, the blood vessels, so basically you cannot breathe. The body is suffocating itself. Now, at the time, I had a new business. I was living on my own. I was engaged. I was about to be married. And all of a sudden, I collapsed. And I was rushed to the hospital. And in the hospital, I went through what is called a clinical death. I was actually in such a bad condition. And they had to bring me back. Now, here's the thing. If you would have told me this story over 20 years ago, I would have said, this is nonsense. But it actually happened to me. I had an experience of traveling through a beautiful tunnel of light with an amazing figure in front of me. I experienced that entity, that figure, as being angelic and feminine. And I just wanted to float to her and hug her. I felt so loved and in such peace and so happy. And at some point I was stopped. She didn't touch me, but I felt as if her energy caught me by the shoulders. And I heard her voice in my left ear. And she said, wake up. It's not your time yet. You have work to do. And I woke up in the ICU. Everything was beeping. They brought me back. Everything, big chaos around me. And they were shocked that I was calm. And I woke up completely calm because I knew I was safe. I knew I was loved. I knew there was guidance. And I knew I had work to do. So there was purpose. I didn't know what it was yet, but I knew there was purpose and I needed to find it. And at that point, I started my journey, my medical journey. And as I was immediately transferred to another hospital, and I started a very invasive treatment that basically meant that they implanted a catheter in my chest, meaning that at this point here, I had a tube coming out. The other end of the tube was in my heart, and that tube was connected to a little pump that was pumping medication into my heart 24 hours a day. So I couldn't disconnect it, okay? And I had to carry a little pump with me, and I was connected to oxygen as well because I was in really bad condition. And that's how I lived. And I remember that the doctor looked at me and he said, you're going to have this for the rest of your life. And your life is probably not going to be very long. And as he was going out of the room, he said to my parents, she has maximum 2 years to live. Now, mind you, that was 20 years ago. And I remember that he stepped out. Two things came to mind. A was, nobody tells me what to do anymore. I'm done with that. Okay, only I determine when I live and how I die. And the other thing was, I all of a sudden remembered that experience because after it happened, I forgot it. So when I got that diagnosis, all of a sudden I remembered that voice that spoke to me in my left ear. And I said, it's going to be okay. I don't know how, okay? But it's going to be okay. And it took me a week. I was on my feet. I was out of the hospital and I came back home. Now, this was after I was married. So this happened about a month before a month after I was married. So I was engaged, and the whole breakdown happened a month after I was married. And so I was newlywed, and I had my husband was a sweet, sweet man. He's not my husband anymore, but he was the sweetest man. And he wanted to give me the best life possible because he was told that his new wife had 2 years to live. So he made a lot of sacrifices that he shouldn't have. He had a big, big heart and wonderful intentions, but this was too much for the both of us. And a few years later, we decided to separate. Before we separated, I wanted a baby. Now, mind you, my illness is called pulmonary hypertension. Women with pulmonary hypertension do not survive pregnancies, period. But I knew I would because one day I dreamt about my daughter. I dreamt that I was giving birth to a beautiful little girl with black curly hair. I dreamt that I was birthing myself. So I was bringing her out from my stomach and I was holding her. She was growing in my hands into a beautiful little girl. And I knew I would survive a pregnancy, B, I would have a little girl, and C, she would survive the pregnancy as well. So I went to my doctor and I said, I want to get pregnant. And he said, you're crazy. And I said, yes, I am. And I still want to get pregnant. Now, luckily for me, he was crazy just like me at the time. And he said, you know what? I'm going to go with it. I don't know why, but I trust you. And of course, he had a lot of conditions, you know, if there's problem with the pregnancy and if this and if this, and I signed a lot of documents. And I got pregnant and I knew, so my husband at the time and I tried twice. The first one, I knew I wasn't pregnant. The second one, the moment we ended, I said, I'm pregnant. He said, you're crazy, you're a witch. What do you mean you're pregnant? It's doing, you know, we need to get dressed first. I said, no, I'm pregnant. I know it. I can feel it. And I was right. I was pregnant. And the pregnancy went amazingly well. And when I was 7 months pregnant, that's when I knew I needed to get into the hospital. So I basically went to the hospital and said, you need to hospitalize me because something is going to go wrong very quickly. And I was right. And I don't know how I was right. Because sometimes I just know things. I have learned to listen to it. So part of my process of growing up and part of my process of allowing my lungs to fill with air and for myself to really occupy space and to own my place was the ability to really listen to the knowledge that's coming up from within. Now, as I say, knowledge that's coming up from within, it's not my knowledge, it's coming through me. I don't know how and I don't know why, but I learned not to argue with it, and I learned to listen to it. And that was the most important thing. And that's how I knew that I needed to bring myself back to the hospital. And I was in the hospital, high-risk pregnancy for about a month. And then basically, I went through a C-section and my little baby was born. Her name is Ella. She's in the living room. She's 17 and a half. I can show you a picture later. She's an amazing, amazing young girl. And at that point, after Ella was born, it was clear, both to Ella's father and myself, that we cannot continue together. And I was grateful for the amazing gift that he gave me. And basically, we separated. And I was left to raise a baby with a very severe illness. I had no job. I had no money. I basically went back to my parents' house. I was, at the time, it took me a year to recuperate. So my body basically recuperate from the trauma of giving birth, because that, you know, had a heavy toll on my system, on my heart and on my lungs and on my body. And I leaned back into Tai Chi and Qigong. And that was my intuition. I said, I need to reconnect with the body. I need to heal my relationship to the body. I understood that there was a process from childhood, because of all the events, there was a process of separating from the body. I was inhabiting the body, but I wasn't really living in the body. So I existed here. And in order for me to really heal, I needed to reclaim my body as a feminine body, as a body that can hug, that can be hugged, that can love, can be loved, can make love, and can breathe and can expand and can have a place in this world. And I started doing Qigong and Tai Chi, and especially Qigong. And my doctors were amazed, because they honestly didn't think that I would ever be back on my feet after the pregnancy. And I was. And I got back on my feet, and I managed to be independent, and I managed to wean myself off the oxygen. And gradually, I also managed to wean myself off the medication, which left everybody absolutely shocked. And at that point, I said, okay, I have work to do. What is that work? And I felt called to help people find the way back home to themselves, help people that feel the choice was taken from them, help them create choice again, and find a way back home to who they really are. You know, the home that we have inside us, inside our hearts, inside our body, that you know, primal relationship that we have with ourselves. So I started supporting other people with pulmonary hypertension. And I created a charity, an association. And then I really wanted to travel overseas. So I met a few people. We decided to create a European association. So now I had a very good excuse to travel to meetings in London and in Rome, and it was absolutely fabulous. And one day I was on TV creating awareness of pulmonary hypertension. I was on this talk show, and as I went down, the segment was over. This woman came out of the audience and she looked at me and she said, "You need to be a coach." And I had no idea what that meant. So I Googled it. What is coaching? What is life coaching? And I studied, and then I continued studying, and I completed coactive coaching. And I took this amazing thing and I went back and said, okay, I want to use coaching with people that have been through a medical crisis or are living with a chronic illness. There's something about the premise of coaching that we hold a person naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. It's very different from therapy. It's not better than therapy, and it's not, worse than therapy. It's just different from therapy, and I have a lot of respect for therapy. And I got stuck because everything that I was taught in coaching school didn't prepare me for the work that I needed to do with people that felt that they have lost control and they have lost choice due to a medical situation or a health situation. And at that point, I said, okay, I'm going to go back to my intuition, ask for guidance, and basically ask my higher guidance, say, okay, so what do I need to learn now? So I learned shamanism, and I learned EFT, and I learned metamedicine, and I learned NLP, and I learned timeline therapy, and I learned a lot of things, and I started integrating them. And in 2010, all of a sudden, colleagues started contacting me and saying, Shiri, that thing that you do with people with illnesses, can you teach me? And I said, what thing do I do? They said, no, this thing that you're doing. And then I realized that through the process of integrating, I created a new model of coaching, and I called it medical coaching. And after working with medical coaching, and after getting a lot of people coming to me and saying, can you teach us that thing that you do? I decided to teach. So I created a school. And in 2011, I created the first course in Israel, followed by 3 more courses. And with one of my students, we founded MCI, which is the Medical Coaching Institute. You can see the logo here. That's my school. And in 2013, we went international. We started in London. Now, all of this time, I am still dealing with an illness, balancing, being a single mother and a business owner and a trainer and a coach. And this inner voice is saying, keep yourself on the path. As long as you're aligned with your value, as long as you know your work, everything is going to be sorted out. It doesn't mean you're not going to have to work hard, because I work very hard, both at, taking care of myself and taking care of my daughter and being a professional and, in my business. But I know that this is my compass. So as long as there is purpose and as long as there is meaning, I am going to be able to manage the rest. I will find the strength. And to be honest with you, I believe to this day that God doesn't give us more than we can handle. I just know that. So anything that comes my way, sometimes I'm like, I look at it and I say, oh my God, what now? But then I say, you know what, God, I believe that you won't give me something that I couldn't handle. Because I believe God doesn't set us up for failure. He only sets us up for success. So I need to figure a way to deal with this new challenge that's coming my way. So fast forward, I've been, until COVID-19, we're going to talk a little bit about COVID-19, but until COVID-19 happened, I was traveling around the world, teaching. And then about 1.5 years ago, all of a sudden it became clear to me that I needed to shift my business to online. It made no sense. I was traveling a lot. People weren't that interested in online courses, and I just knew I had to create an online version to my course. 1.5 years later, COVID-19 happened, and basically I continued working because I had all the infrastructure prepared. And that was, a gut feeling. I was honored and privileged to be in Mumbai about 1.5 years ago, almost 2 years, in a big conference in Mumbai, talking about health disturbances in the VUCA world. and I fell in love with India. And so speaking about spirituality, I'm just going to go to the reading. I have this amazing little friend. Her name is Jay, and she is from Mumbai. And we met and we spent an afternoon together. She's a young woman. She's in her early 20s. And she keeps contacting me every now and again, reminding me, asking me for spiritual guidance and reminding me to keep on my spiritual path. So she has been a present and a blessing in my life, reminding me that spirituality is one of the strength and one of the main resources in my life. So bringing it all, I want to say a few things about control. I want to say a few things about choice, and I want to say a few things about the difference between being alive and living, because there's a big difference. Because if we look at living as being the opposite of death, then basically in order to live or to be alive, all we need to do is basically not die, okay? So we need to eat, we need to drink, we need to have a warm temperature, we need to defecate, release, all the garbage that the body doesn't need anymore. But that's not real. I mean, that's not life. You have people in coma that are not dead. But are they living? Yes, they stayed alive. But there's something more when we talk about living, because living is a verb. It's not just a state of existence. And living is about purpose. Living is about understanding that you're not alone. Living is about being in service of mankind, because mankind is in your service. So as I'm sitting here, I am in your service, in the service of your growth, and you're in the service of my growth. I am in the service of your well-being and your quality of life. And you, by simply being up, by simply showing here today, you are in the service of my growth, my wellness, my well-being, and my quality of life. We are connected. And that is part of the purpose. There is no purpose without community. My purpose is worthless without you. You are part of my purpose. I am part of your purpose. And that understanding that we are all connected, we are never really alone. Even when we feel lonely, we're not really lonely. It is our fear that puts a wall between us and other people. It is our fear. It is our old sadness. It is our old traumas that create the illusion that we are not connected. And this is why healing is so important. Because healing is more than being healthy. Healing is about being whole. And this is where I make a separation between healing and curing. Curing, it's something that a medical team would do. But healing is something that we do for ourselves. And we do that through the help of others. But what is the true meaning of healing? The true meaning of healing is the ability to look in the mirror and say, I am more than my circumstances. I am more than my childhood. I am more than any scar, physical or emotional. I am more than my illness. I am an entire system capable of love, capable of interaction, and I am part of a larger system, and I am connected. I might have an illness. I might have a painful past. I am so much more than that. I am a child of the universe. I'm a child of God. And I have brothers and sisters all over. I am connected. And that is a true meaning of a healthy state of mind. And this is why I say being healthy has nothing to do with whether or not you have an illness or not. When I look in the mirror, I see a healthy woman that has a medical condition. I am not a sick woman. I have never been a sick woman. I have been dealing with medical challenges. But the moment I sat on the floor many, many years ago with a gun and I chose to live, that was the moment that a healthy woman was born. That was the moment. And this is about choice, because we always have choice. Even when we feel that we don't have any choice, we have choice. And the choice is connected to our perception of control. Because people that go through adversity and people that experience illness or experience trauma and war and abuse are people that have experienced loss of control. And many people like that, when I work with them on one-on-one and I say, what do you have control over? They say, absolutely nothing. And I said, yes, and there's something that you do have control over. Because if you think about it, everything that is outside our body, we don't really have control over. We don't have control over the internet connection right now. I mean, we can hope for the best, but you know, we don't have control over viruses. We don't have control over our body. We can take amazing care of ourselves, but you know what? We can walk down the street and someone will hit us with a car. God forbid, okay? But things happen. We have control over one thing, and that's the most important thing. We have control over the meaning we give things that happen to us. And that's where choice comes in. Whatever happens to me, I choose what meaning I give to it. And the meaning that I'm going to give that thing that happened to me, that's going to create my internal reality. Now, from my perspective, there is no external reality. The only thing that really matters is our internal reality, because that's where we live. We live with our beliefs, we live with our emotions, we live with our inner world. So when we choose the interpretation we give to the events that happen to us, we choose the way we perceive the world. And what we're doing is we are creating our internal reality. And when we realize that we have the ability by choice to control and create our internal reality, this is when we understand that we actually have full control over our lives. We don't have control over what happens to us, but we have control over the quality of our lives, how we're going to live the time that we have on this planet. So I want to be conscious of the time here, okay? And just, you know, ask if there are any questions, comments, things you want to share, because I can talk for hours. I'm not going to talk for hours. I have 1 hour.
People saying a lot of things on the Facebook, and there are people sharing here on the chat. So guys, if you have any questions right now, I am just, I'm feeling blessed. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm feeling blessed, you know, by being here. And what I want to say is, you know, many times we look for inspirations and heroes, you know, that have capes and have superpowers. The ability to realize that at any given moment we have choice, the ability to execute choice, guys, that's the real superhero. That's the real superpower. And in that aspect, we all have the potential to be superheroes, the superheroes in our lives. And that's the most important things. And if there's one thing that we want to teach our children, it's that power of choice. The choice not just to stay alive and live, okay? Eat, drink, sleep, get up in the morning, go to work, come back, watch TV, sleep again. No, it's a choice to really, really live. Find a purpose, make a difference, be connected. Whatever you believe about COVID-19, doesn't matter. If it's not COVID-19, it's something else. Rise above the circumstances, okay? Social distancing doesn't mean emotional distancing. Keep that emotional connection. Okay, keep that spiritual connection, keep that energetic connection. Okay, look around you. If you see someone that's lonely, if you see someone you feel that is being disconnected, reach out. And I'm going to say one more thing. Look out for people around you that are at risk, because there's something happening to people that are at risk. And these are our grandmothers and grandfathers. These are people that are living with the chronic conditions. These are the people that basically need to stay at home with the mask on and not come out because they're at risk. One thing that's been coming up a lot in my coaching room is the experience of being left behind. Left behind to die, so to speak. Everybody is so focused on trying to get over COVID and go back and create this new normal, and they're leaving behind the people that are actually living with chronic illness and the elderly that are at risk group, and basically saying, you stay at home, figure it out. There's a genuine experience of being left behind to die. Now, Everyone that works, understands mind-body connections, know that it's just a matter of time before that experience has a physical manifestation. That is toxic. Okay, we need to embrace. Nobody remains behind. Nobody, and that needs to be a policy. If we are a community, if we are a human race, and there's this lovely lady, American ladies, and said there is no white race or black race or Asian race. There's one race, the human race. Okay, so yes, we are all one. Okay, we are all connected, whether we like it or not. Nobody is left behind. Okay, don't let anyone be left behind. Reach out to help other people and reach out when you need help, because there's going to be someone there to hold your hand. I promise you.
Wow. Wow. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you just left me completely speechless. And the people who are going on. So Lucille White from South Africa is saying that your story is very touching. Kazayu from California and Japan is saying the choice is very powerful. There are other people on the Facebook who are saying that thank you, and I'm very, very grateful. And let's go with this crowd here. Guys, any feedback? At least you can give a feedback. Come on. If you don't have a question and I can understand, how about a feedback?
Yeah, share your thoughts and your feeling. And if you want to give me that feedback like one-on-one, then you know where to find me. I'm on Facebook. Okay. So you can also reach out if you want to talk to me one-on-one. Feel free. I'm not a big mama, but I have a big hug. I can't hug physically. I hug with energy, and I can hug a lot. So reach out.
Okay, guys, so just putting in the chat box. But how about unmuting yourself? Let's start with Teji. Teji, why not? Let's not lose a voice. Let's tell this lovely lady whatever you feel like. Teji, Ishween.
Yeah,
Janet. Yes, Teji.
Shiri, thank you so much for sharing. I really loved some of the different perspective that you put between living, dying and living. Some very different perspectives I heard for the first time, and it really widens your way of looking at things. And I loved your definition of healing. I had never seen such a beautiful definition of how to look at healing. And thank you for sharing so generously every detail of your life's journey.
Thank you for holding the space and listening.
Yeah, I mean, I often say this, and I was sharing it with our guests, that if we can't even share our stories, then what is there left for us to share?
Yeah.
Nothing. And we are so constantly trying to hide, trying to keep our secrets as if they're going to multiply, and I don't know do what. Okay, so Ishween, would you like to say something? Janet?
I'm still dumb. I mean, like, no words I'm still thinking on it. Like, it's so deep, thoughts you gave. Like, to be honest, no words. Thank you so much.
Janet, would you like to share something? Geeti?
Well, I'd just say that it was amazing. I'm really touched. And you put so many of my feelings into words, my thoughts. And it was it just clicked. This was really, really amazing. Thank you.
Wow. I could hear that in your voice. Geeti, would you like to say something?
Yes, I also was very touched, and I think it's very deep and personal story that leaves many vibrations in me that will go on for some time, I think, and pop up in different situations like thinking about your story and how did you manage the complications that you have lived through and how you've managed it. You're so strong. It was lovely to hear.
Thank you. Dr. Varsha, thank you for those thoughts, Giti. Dr. Varsha.
Yes, ma'am. She was very amazing. I would just like to know the full form of MCI. What you're saying,
Medical Coaching Institute.
Yeah. Can you just elaborate a little on that?
So Medical Coaching Institute basically is a school that trains medical coaches. Medical coaching is an advanced training for people who are already life, business, executive coaches, any kind of coaches. And we also, one thing that I did, because I came across a lot of healthcare practitioners practicing medicine in different ways. One of my agendas is to teach healthcare practitioners to use soft skills and not just, knives and medical tools. So understand that their words can be healing or toxic, their body language, how to do empathy. In MCI, there's a lot of programs for healthcare practitioners around communicational skills, medical leadership, how to help clients build adherence. And basically, it's a medical collaborative approach. So it's taking the coach approach and teaching doctors and nurses to be more coach-like with their patients.
Lovely. Can we get your site? How to get into admission, some online courses if you have?
Sure, I will type it in the chat box.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Wonderful. And if you can also later type it on the Facebook, that would be brilliant. So people can get both the sites' information.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that question, Shamiana. Do you have anything to share, or Sanskriti, do you have anything to share? Shamina.
Hi, thank you so much for sharing your story. Your story is beautiful.
Thank you.
Sanskriti. Hi, Sanskriti. Would you like to share something? Okay. So thank you, Shiri, so much. You're right. If I wasn't looking at you, I wouldn't believe it. And if I didn't know you the way I know you, I would say somebody is just bluffing.
Yeah, I get that a lot.
You remember about the book that you spoke? That's not still written?
Yeah, it's not still written.
So when are you writing it?
Yeah.
I'm sure we're going to meet soon again. Talking a little bit more about your work. This time you spoke about yourself. It will be a pleasure to have you again on this forum. If you can talk about your work then. And I'm sure people would want to know more about your work from here. So thank you again. Thank you from here. Over to the next speaker now.